Meta employees burned through 60 trillion tokens in a single month, and when someone built a dashboard to track the spending, it was shut down 2 days later. Meanwhile, OpenAI is quietly offering the US government a slice of the company. Here's what you need to know today. Welcome to Ammar Talks Tech. Today, Anthropic is chasing its own custom chip. Google just logged the largest electricity spike in its history. Microsoft is moving into territory that used to belong to consultancies, and Meta is rationing AI tokens internally. But the story you need to stay for is OpenAI handing the US government a financial stake in the company, because the implications for AI governance are unlike anything we've seen before. Anthropic is in talks with Samsung to build a custom AI chip, and the timing is not a coincidence. Right now, nearly every frontier AI lab runs on NVIDIA hardware. That dependency is expensive, supply-constrained, and increasingly seen as a strategic vulnerability. According to the information, Anthropic is in contact with Samsung to explore a collaboration around a custom AI chip. The details are still wide open. Anthropic has not yet decided what the chip will be used for, how it will fit into a server, or how powerful it will be. Anthropic told TechCrunch that a diversified hardware stack, including chips from Google, Amazon, and NVIDIA, will remain central to its compute strategy. This comes shortly after OpenAI teamed up with Broadcom to announce its own custom inference processor, dubbed Jalapeno, which OpenAI claims delivers better performance per watt than competitor chips. Two of the most prominent frontier labs are now independently pursuing custom silicon within a short window of each other. Anthropic's talks with Samsung are early and undefined, but the direction is clear. The labs want optionality at the hardware layer. Worth noting, Samsung and NVIDIA are already collaborating on an AI chip factory in South Korea, and Samsung uses NVIDIA's software in its chip manufacturing. So this isn't a clean break from the existing ecosystem, it's a hedge inside it. For the broader industry, chip supply chain access is quietly becoming as important as model quality. The labs that control their own silicon roadmap will have a structural cost and capability edge over those that don't. Google's electricity use jumped 37% in a single year, the largest spike in the company's history. AI infrastructure runs on power, a lot of it. And until now, the scale of that demand has mostly lived in projections and estimates. Google reported its annual electricity consumption rose by 37% in 2025, the largest annual increase in the company's history. According to Ars Technica, Google's data centers consumed more than 42 million megawatt-hours in 2025, up from 30.6 million in 2024. Total electricity use has grown more than 250% since 2019. Despite the surge in consumption, Google says it reduced operational emissions by 2% year-over-year. But according to Ars Technica and Let's Data Science, Google's supply chain emissions, what's called Scope 3, grew 25%, largely driven by semiconductor suppliers running on fossil-heavy grids in Asia. The 2% operational emissions reduction is the number Google leads with. The 25% supply chain emissions growth is the number that tells you what's actually happening. The sustainability story gets complicated the moment you look upstream, at the fabs making the chips that power the data centers. Google did announce significant clean energy agreements in 2025, according to Let's Data Science, including restarting a nuclear plant in Iowa and a large hydropower framework. But the gap between energy demand growth and clean energy deployment is widening in real time. Apply's energy footprint is no longer abstract. A 37% single-year spike from one company puts a hard physical number on what scaling costs. Regulators, utilities, and investors are all going to start paying closer attention to this line item. OpenAI wants to give the US government a 5% stake in the company. Let that sink in. OpenAI is in the middle of a high-stakes restructuring from non-profit to for-profit, and it's operating under intense political scrutiny at exactly the same moment. According to the Financial Times, citing two people familiar with the matter, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has proposed donating 5% of the company's equity to a US sovereign wealth fund. The Fort reports the move is meant to, quote, secure good relations with the administration and address political blowback. Under the proposal, other AI companies would also contribute similar stakes, though significant details remain unresolved. President Trump confirmed he had discussed, quote, concepts where pieces could be given to the American public, where the American public essentially becomes a partner with the companies. OpenAI's own April policy paper had already proposed a public wealth fund that could invest directly in AI labs. This is not a philanthropy story, it's a governance story. If the US government holds equity in OpenAI, it moves from being a potential regulator or adversary to being a co-investor with a financial interest in the company's success. That structurally changes the incentive of oversight. It also sets a precedent. If one lab does this, others face pressure to follow. Senator Bernie Sanders has proposed a one-time 50% tax on AI company stock through a bill called the American AI Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, which has not yet advanced to committee. So there's political pressure coming from multiple directions here. The relationship between AI companies and the US government is being renegotiated right now, and equity is the new currency of that negotiation. Watch how regulators respond, because a government with a financial stake in a company's upside is a very different kind of regulator. Microsoft just launched a dedicated AI deployment company, and it's coming for the consultants. Selling AI tools is one business. Deploying AI inside enterprises and owning the outcomes is a completely different one. And historically, that second business belonged to system integrators and consulting firms. Microsoft announced a new operating business called Microsoft Frontier Company, focused on enterprise AI deployments. It's backed by a $2.5 billion investment and 6,000 industry and engineering experts. Microsoft's commercial business CEO Judson Althoff called it the largest, most capable, outcome-driven engineering organization in the industry. Early partners include the London Stock Exchange Group, Unilever, Land O'Lakes, and Accenture. According to CNBC, Rodrigo Quede Lima, who previously led Microsoft's Asia business, will serve as president. This announcement came 2 days after Amazon Web Services committed $1 billion to its own AI deployment venture. Microsoft and AWS launching deployment-focused entities within 2 days of each other is not a coincidence. It's a race to own the enterprise AI implementation layer. That layer is where the recurring revenue, the data access, and the switching costs live. By moving into direct deployment, Microsoft is stepping into territory previously occupied by partners like Accenture. Notably, Accenture is listed as a launch partner here, which is either a sign of collaboration or a very polite form of competition. According to CNBC, Microsoft's stock has slumped 21% in 2025, the worst performance among mega-cap tech companies. A move this significant, in that context, is also an investor signal. The platform era of AI, where you build tools and let partners do the work, may be ending for the biggest players. Microsoft and AWS are betting that owning deployment is where the durable margin is. Meta employees burned 60 trillion tokens in a month, and the dashboard tracking it was shut down days after it became public. Every AI prompt costs money to run. At enterprise scale, those costs add up fast, and most companies are still figuring out what they're actually getting for that spend. According to SemiAnalysis, Meta employees consumed over 60 trillion tokens over a 30-day period. A single employee accounted for roughly 280 billion tokens on their own. Meta had built an internal dashboard called Claude Economics to track this spending. But according to SemiAnalysis, it was shut down 2 days after the information reported on it. SemiAnalysis also estimates that Meta was burning through approximately 70 trillion tokens per month in February. Separately, SemiAnalysis reports that Uber burned through its entire annual Claude Code and Codex budget in 4 months, and subsequently imposed a $1.500 per month per employee cap on AI token spending. Details here are limited. These figures come from a single source, but the pattern is striking. Even companies with enormous AI budgets are hitting friction around internal consumption and ROI. The fact that Meta shut down its own spending transparency dashboard shortly after it became public news raises obvious questions about what that data showed and whether it was comfortable to have visible. The Uber data point, burning an annual budget in 4 months and then rationing, suggests that unrestricted internal AI access may not be sustainable at current inference prices, even for large companies. Inference costs at scale remain brutal. If the biggest spenders are starting to ration, that's a signal that ROI on internal AI tooling is still unproven, and that the economics of AI deployment have not been solved yet. Pull back and look at all 5 stories together. The frontier labs are trying to own their chip supply. The cloud giants are trying to own enterprise deployment. OpenAI is trying to make the US government a financial partner. And even the heaviest AI spenders internally are struggling to justify the cost. Every one of these moves is a company trying to lock in a structural advantage before the market stabilizes. Because everyone can see that whoever controls the infrastructure layer, the government relationship, and the deployment channel, will have leverage that model quality alone can't overcome. That's today's episode. One question worth sitting with: if the US government holds equity in OpenAI, does that make AI safer or just better protected? Tell me what you think in the comments. If you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Tomorrow, we're watching how the rest of the industry responds to the sovereign wealth fund proposal, and that story is just getting started.